The Team Rocket expansion gave Wigglytuff a lot of brand new tools to play with. Mainly the trainer cards challenge, which helped you fill up your bench or as another draw power card, and also nightly garbage run, which kept you from decking out and let you recycle vital resources for the deck. And then you also had potion energy and full heal energy that fit perfectly into this deck because Wigglytuff, after you play a double colorless, you always have that one colorless, so you have the option to play either of those energy and take advantage of their added effects. With the addition of these cards, Wigglytuff decks got a lot stronger, but the core Pokemon didn't really change. You still just have Wigglytuff and then big basics like Scyther and Chansey. However, because I wanted to do a Rocket deck, Luigi Legend down in the comments actually requested this as well. I decided to add probably the best card to come out of Rocket, if not the only card that was used heavily that came out of the set. And that would be Drowzee. Drowzee's ability lets it do long distance hypnosis, which you flip a coin, and if heads, your opponent goes to sleep. If tails, you go to sleep. And this is a great ability because you get a 50% chance to put a special condition on your opponent that will sometimes force them to switch and change up the way they play. But also, if you flip tails and put your own Pokemon to sleep, you can get around that using full heal energy or full heal trainer cards. And the reason that Drowzee is so useful is because you can stack these abilities. So if you have 4 Drowzee on your bench, you can flip up to 4 coins, however many it takes to put your opponent to sleep. Drowzee also has a really useful evolution in this set in Dark Hypno, and that's for mirror matches. You can look at Dark Hypno's bench manipulation attack, and if you're playing against another Wigglytuff deck, you're both probably taking advantage of those challenge trainers. You can throw out this Hypno and deal anywhere between 0 and 120 damage. Even though Wigglytuff does have a resistance to Psychic, odds are you're still going to be dealing a big chunk of damage to one. So let's look at the basic framework of this deck, and then we'll talk about how this variant of Do the Wave stacks up against the vanilla version. So if you haven't checked out my Wiggly video about the basic framework of this deck, you can go check that one out as well. It's not going to differ too much from this one. I still use full play sets of Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff, as well as Lickitung as a deterrent for Mr. Mime, as well as a damage sponge, which can come in really useful with that 1 energy cost attack. But I'm also using Drowzee in this deck, which helps mix up your opponent a little bit. It can stall them out at times, give you a chance to attack maybe twice when they only have a chance for 1. And then I run the 2 Hypno in this deck as well. You're only really going to be using those against mirror matches. It's more of a Wigglytuff deterrent, but it can also come in useful. If your opponent actually takes you up on those challenge cards, they're going to have a full bench, and that's when you can bring out this Hypno and actually surprise them. It wasn't used very much in the format. It tried to have its own archetype for a while, just to try to combat those Do the Wave variants. But it couldn't stand on its own, but I think as a tech to a Wigglytuff deck, it works out pretty well. And again, there's that challenge card, which, man, this thing has a lot of text on it. Pretty much you have to challenge your opponent verbally, and then they either agree or disagree. If they agree, then you can both fill up your benches. But if they disagree, you can just draw 2 cards, so it functions as a bill, basically, if they don't want you to fill up your bench. I really like the card art on Challenge too. One of my favorites of this era. Nightly Garbage Run became a staple of the format because it kept you from decking out, and it kind of ruined decks that stalled and wanted to make you deck out. So most decks ran at least 1, most of the time 2, no more than that though. Full Heal is in here so that if you put your own Wigglytuff to sleep, you can just wake it back up. Ideally, you want to have 4 Drowzee on your bench. That way you can flip coins until you put your opponent to sleep. In the process, you'll probably put your own Pokemon to sleep. But you can just use Full Heal or slap down a Full Heal energy on it, and it solves your problem. Your basic energy removals, bills, and plus powers that go into a Wigglytuff deck, it helps you combat your opponent's strategy by stalling them out of energy and depriving them of energy. And then the plus powers are in there for when you just need an extra 10 or 20 damage to knock out like one of those big basics, a Hitmonchan or an Electabuzz. Switch can also come in useful if you don't have a full heal or a full heal energy and you accidentally put your own Pokemon to sleep, hopefully you have another Hypno or a Wigglytuff build up on the bench that you can switch, and you could possibly turn right back into a Wigglytuff using that strategy. 4 double colorless energy, and then also full playsets of the full heal energy and potion energy. Potion energy has really helped Wigglytuff thrive a lot more in this format, because a lot of times there would be cards that could easily 2-hit a Wigglytuff, namely stuff like Hitmonchan, Magmar. But with Potion Energy, you can heal off that chunk of damage that was dealt to you the prior turn, and they can't really 2-shot you anymore. And the 6 Psychic Energy are in here purely for the Hypno, just in case you have to use its bench manipulation attack. You can also just use them as a simple throwdown on a Wigglytuff for that 1 extra energy after you've already added a double colorless. It also comes in handy for putting down on a Lickitung so that you're not really wasting any of the special energy. So apart from the Drowzee and the Dark Hypno, this Wigglytuff is gonna play very similarly to the other one. Like I said, if you haven't watched that video, go ahead and check that one out. Now, one of the reasons I like this build of Wigglytuff is because it plays into the disruption aspect that most Wigglytuffs had, but in a different way. Most decks at the time weren't expecting special conditions. Base set up through Fossil were very light on special conditions. Most of them were on grass Pokemon, which were never used in the format. And Drowzee was teched into a lot of decks for this reason, but at the same time, not very many people were running full heals to help combat it. Usually they would just rely on a switch or would try to retreat in order to get rid of it. A lot of times maybe you would have a Scyther that you could just retreat and then swap back into. But the fact that you could also bring that Hypno into this deck really helps a lot. A deck that's so reliant on challenge, and you can put your opponent in a position where they think they're getting the edge on you by filling up their bench, and then you can bring out this Hypno and really ruin their strategy by forcing them to flip 6 coins and then deal damage to their Pokemon. As if dealing damage off of an opportunity that you gave to them isn't enough, you make them flip the coins, which is a really bitch move. It's hilarious. Like other Wigglytuff variants, you can really tech in anything to this deck. Anything you might need, considering whatever opponents you think you're going to be up against. You can throw in Scythers, which really help with the sleep as well, because you can like switch and then retreat back from Scyther. Also, you can do a classic Wavemaker deck where you can throw in Electabuzz, Magmar, Hitmonchan. That way you have a little bit more coverage. At that point, you're kind of putting Drowzee and Hypno to the wayside and not using them as much anymore. You're relying just on those new trainers. But if you really want to capitalize on what the Rocket set has to offer, you need to be utilizing those Drowzees and getting that synergy going between the Challenge Trainer card and Hypno. The Hypno helps cover the Hitmonchan weakness that this deck typically has, as well as the weakness to Magmar and Electabuzz that are common in Haymaker, because you carry those full heal energies and those full heals that can help you get around any poisoning or paralyzation that occurs. It can also help you stall out Venusaurs, Blastoise, Mr. Mime, anything that has a Pokepower, because while they're asleep, that Pokepower shuts down. Typically, when someone sees a Wigglytuff being played against them, they think, oh, okay, they're going to deal 70 damage next turn. I need to plan for that. And that's why I prefer this build, because it really messes with them and it shuts their strategy down in ways that they don't expect. And because I have Hypno in here and I need to put the Psychic Energy in, it does throw off the trainer balance a little bit more. You still have the option to throw in those super energy removals, your Professor Oaks, your Gust of Wind that can help out Wigglytuff, really wreck your opponent. It's just that this build, I opted to use a few different things just to play more into the Drowzee and Hypno strategy. I didn't get to playtest this deck too extensively. I played it against a Damage Swap that used Drowzee as well. I played it against some other Wigglytuff variants, and I found that it worked really well against those. So if anyone out there actually builds this deck and playtests it against more decks from this metagame, just let me know down in the comments. And thanks again to Luigi Legends for suggesting this deck. You'll actually get a third version of Wigglytuff coming up once we get into the Prop 15 format. As always, thank you for watching, and stay wiggly, my friends.